Different now, it's Inauguration Day, it's also Africa Day, and we thought we'd look at the economics of the continent. Can Africa, whose past has been marked by poverty, look to a prosperous future? That was what the president was alluding to today. The Institute for Futures Research, based at the University of Stellenbosch Business School, says the answer is Afri-capitalism. Capitalism, of course, has often been viewed as a negative system across this continent, but the Institute says Africans need to indigenize capitalism for their own benefit. To discuss, we're joined by a futurist at the Institute for Futures Research, Dr. Njeri Mwagiru, on Skype. Doctor, thank you for being with us. Can we start with what is Afri-capitalism?
Thank you for having me on your show. Afri-capitalism is an economic model that has been introduced by Tony Elumelu, a Nigerian banker and economist, and it foregrounds certain principles that encourages business to be an active agent of development, and it promotes effective coordination between government, business, and civil society towards driving long-term sustainability and business impacts.
So it's a mix of capitalism, which is often seen as cold and hard, and maybe Ubuntu.
Absolutely. I think that's a good interpretation. It tries to center African people, African societies, cultures, and worldviews within a capitalist model. And I would like to perhaps caution that it's not necessarily the answer to all of our challenges, but it is an avenue that may be worthwhile to explore.
How does this integration work? Because capitalism, the whole idea of it is that if everyone looks out for themselves, that will ultimately benefit everyone. There will be better competition, cheaper goods, etc. How do you get capitalism to suddenly talk about caring about Africa and its cultures and people?
That's a very good question. And you're right that the assumption around capitalism is that it's an extremely individualist philosophy. And the idea of linking it to more African-based philosophies is to emphasize and promote a communal, beneficial outcome from our business endeavors. And ultimately, capitalism is about business, and business narrows down to entrepreneurs and to the individuals and people that make up those organizations. So if we perhaps locate business in the hearts, minds, cultures of African people, we might see that integration. However, I doubt it will be straightforward or simple.
Yeah, I really want to push this because some political theorists say there's a deep paradox here. Say you look at tribal leaders in Africa, they would look after their people first, their tribe first, and of course it was fine to accept gifts, but under democracy and capitalism that's seen as corrupt, it's seen as nepotism. Can you have a good balance of Africanism and capitalism?
I'm not sure about whether you can have a good balance, but we are proposing that there might be avenues for collaboration or combination of certain approaches.
Well, let's make it very practical. So in South Africa, we often say business should be creating jobs. They should be doing more to help the country. But business people are not taking oaths of office like the president did today. Why should they care?
Well, the reason Afri-capitalism would say business should care is that the markets that they're wishing to operate within have certain priorities that it may warrant business to take into account. And I think if we reflect on South African history, it may be worthwhile to note that the end of the apartheid restrictive regime was also heavily encouraged by business interests, which understood that having a massively oppressed market was not in the benefit of their gains and profits.
So it's actually to the benefit of business people to help uplift this continent. When people become richer, they will buy more. Simple.
Absolutely. We can pitch the engagement and incentivize business to engage with development. But it's important to say that there's both a business case in terms of market growth, investment returns, and profits, but also a values case in terms of the ethics of business. And at the University of Stellenbosch Business School, we do have conversations around the need to center ethics and values within business as well.
What is wrong with capitalism today? So there's been a very checkered past, but you're saying in Africa it still allows for the extraction of value without adding corresponding value to society. Can you explain that?
Yes, I think the models that we are currently seeing predominating in African context focus on extraction of value from our commodities and resources primarily, as well as exploitation of our people. Ethiopia has recently been lauded as the cheapest site for textile labor. And while this may attract very much needed investment in Ethiopia, what does this mean for the social upliftment of the labor and community? What does it mean for the ordinary Ethiopian person?
And Doctor, I'd love your views on China coming in, offering to start building airports across Africa to help with many government developmental needs. Some saying, though, that's economic colonialism. How does Africa assess opportunities like that?
That's a challenging question. On the one hand, of course, we welcome the investment of China and the contribution to infrastructure growth, which is one of the cornerstones of development in terms of seeing growth of industry. However, we also want to be cautious about the international relations we have encouraged vis-a-vis the levels of debt we're taking on, and also perhaps the levels of cultural exchange.
All right, so thank you very much. The future is Afri-capitalism. That was Dr. Njeri Mwagiru from the Institute for Futures Research via Skype.